Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Settle yourself in and allow the sound of my voice to drift slowly across your thoughts. Tonight, we are traveling far back in time, to a place that is often called the cradle of civilization, a land between rivers where some of the earliest cities rose from the soil, where writing was first pressed into clay, and where temples and palaces began to shape human history. This is ancient Mesopotamia, the region that lay between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in what is now modern Iraq and parts of Syria, Iran, and Turkey. When we hear the phrase cradle of civilization, it can sound idyllic, as though life there was a golden dawn of human progress, and in some ways it was. Here, people learned to work the land together, to record their stories, and to build great structures that touched the sky. But life was far from easy. Floodwaters could destroy homes and fields. The labor of maintaining canals and farmlands was unending. Kings and priests demanded obedience, taxes, and tribute. So tonight, let us walk quietly into the world of Mesopotamia. We will begin by placing ourselves within the rhythm of ordinary life, the slow work of farmers, the soft rustle of reeds in the marshes, the careful building of mud brick houses, and the scratching of reeds on clay tablets. Imagine yourself among them, living day by day in a land where survival was never guaranteed, yet where human ingenuity flourished. The sun warms your shoulders as you help your family prepare for the long day of planting. Your father drives his sturdy oxen before him, while your mother carries a woven basket filled with grain. For weeks, you have been tending the fields, clearing weeds and turning over the soil so that it is ready to accept the precious seeds. Now, walking behind your father, you carefully drop the seeds into the furrows he has made with the plow. You know how important this task is. If the crops fail, then there will be hunger in the coming months. The soil here is rich, watered by the river Euphrates, which flows like a lifeline through the land. It is good land, but the unpredictable flooding of the river can wash away all your hard work. In the shade of the hut, you eat your breakfast, bread dipped into a sour milk called kumis. It tastes sweet on your tongue, and you think about the cattle that will soon give milk again. The goats bleat from their pen, and you know that they too will give you gifts in the months ahead. Each animal and plant seems to have a spirit inside it, and your family respects these spirits. That is why you always leave an offering of grain when you harvest, or pour a little milk onto the ground for the goat to suck. You and your friends like to play a game that imitates the zigzags of the riverboats. You pretend to be ships sailing upstream against the current, or nimble fishing boats darting between the tall reeds. In the evening, you watch the kingfisher swoop down to catch a fish, and you tell each other stories of the hero Gilgamesh, who went on daring adventures to faraway lands, bringing back useful plants and knowledge for the people. After sunset, the desert wind blows through the tall grasses, making the reeds sway like dancers. As darkness deepens, the stars come out to watch over you. You think of the many gods the people here believe in, like the sky god An, the earth goddess Kai, and the powerful gods Enki and Ninhursag, who taught humans how to live on the land. The moon rides high in the black sky, and you finish your evening meal of barley bread, cheese, vegetables, dates, and figs. You might have some fish, if there has been enough rain to fill the streams. Your mother tells stories of the great fish goddess Atargatis, who lives at the bottom of the sea, where she turned herself into a fish to escape from her suitor, the storm god Adad. In the morning, you wake up early and help your mother prepare breakfast. She grinds grain into flour with a large stone pestle, and you knead dough for bread. The walls of your house are made of sun-dried mud bricks, and the roof is thatched with reeds. You look out and see that someone has left offerings of fruit and flowers at the household shrine. Perhaps it is for your family's protective spirit. Your father is preparing to take his turn guarding the village wall. He gives you a small knife, and you go out to collect reeds for the roof thatch. You take your knife and carefully slice the reeds, making sure not to cut too deeply into the central pith. When you have enough, you take them home to help your mother weave them into mats, baskets, and rope. When you grow older, you might find a husband and start your own family. You may live in a city. There, tall temple towers called ziggurats touch the sky, and the streets are full of merchants, artisans, and visitors from other lands. You may live in a wealthy palace where servants wait on the king and queen, or in a modest house with a garden filled with flowering vines. Where you live depends on the favor of the gods and the power of the king. The kings sometimes change, and when they do, their armies march through the land, demanding obedience and tribute from the city-states. Even the mighty city of Babylon is said to have risen from a small village to become a sprawling city of brick, with hanging gardens that amaze travelers from other lands. As you grow older still, you might even travel yourself. If you are a merchant, you might sail on a boat to faraway lands to bring back goods to sell. There you would enter strange cities, walk among people with unfamiliar customs, and perhaps hear tales of faraway places like the legendary Dilmun, an island paradise beyond the sea. You could sail to the mountains of Lebanon to buy cedar wood, prized for its beauty and used to build temples and boats. Or you could journey down the Persian Gulf to the land of the Arabian Sea. If you are a priest, you might journey to the holy city of Eridu, where it is said the gods first revealed their wisdom to humans. In Eridu, you would visit the temple of Enki, the god of wisdom and magic, and pray that he would give you the strength to understand the mysteries of the universe. Maybe one day you will be the one telling stories to wide-eyed children gathered around their parents. You will speak of the Epic of Gilgamesh, the story of a great king who searched for immortality and learned that only the gods can truly live forever. You will tell stories of the goddess Ishtar, who fell in love with mortals and brought both great joy and terrible destruction to the world. You will even tell of the story of the flood, when the great god Enlil unleashed a terrible flood upon the world, destroying everything. Only Utnapishtim, a man favored by the gods, survived in an ark that floated on the water until the world was ready to be reborn again. If you are very lucky, you might live to be 70 or 80 years old. You will have seen empires rise and fall, kings live and die, and new stories emerge to replace old ones. You will have watched generations come and go, just as the seasons come and go, and as the years pass, you will feel the weight of time upon your shoulders like a heavy cloak. Now we leave you in the cradle of civilization. May the gods watch over you, and may the river be kind to your fields. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Voices of the Past. If you did, please subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any of our future episodes. You can also follow us on social media to learn more about ancient history. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. You wake up in your house made of sun-baked bricks. Outside, the sky has started to lighten. Soon you'll need to get to work in the fields. Your home is close to the river, one of many houses in a community of farmers and herders. Life here revolves around the river. You know that this season is usually when the rains come and your fields need tending. Welcome to my channel. Today we are exploring ancient Mesopotamia. You probably heard about this place because it was considered the birthplace of civilization. In fact, it was here where humans first settled down and stayed in one place, raising crops and livestock. To do that, they needed to live on land that could grow things like grain, fruits, and vegetables. They also needed a source of fresh water. The land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers had both of these things. This area became known as the Fertile Crescent, and eventually the home of the Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. Your home is pretty basic. It's made out of mud bricks that you and other members of your village spent weeks making. Each brick had to be carefully dried in the sun. If they weren't dried enough, they would crumble when it rained, but if they were dried out too much, they would crack when water hit them. While the walls of your home don't offer much comfort from the heat during the day or the cold desert winds at night, It does keep your family safe from wild animals and the elements. At least the roof is flat, and you can even use it as another room to sleep in during the hot nights. You open the door and step out into the heat of the day. You grab a rope and lead your goat out of the pen. Then you take a staff and start poking your flock of sheep, getting them ready to walk down to the fields. There's work to be done and not much time to waste. When you arrive at the field, you see your neighbor using a wooden plow pulled by oxen to make furrows in the soil. After that, he'll fill the furrows with seeds and cover it all with more soil. Planting season is one of your favorite times of the year. You watch him and try to find a spot of shade to sit in. When the planting is finished, you and your neighbors spread out blankets and eat the bread and cheese that your wife packed for you. You chat about how the planting went and how your families are doing. All of you hope that the rain falls soon and that your crops will flourish. The rest of the day you spend digging canals to bring water to your fields. Without water, nothing grows, but too much water causes floods that destroy everything. During the long days of work, you take comfort in knowing that you have some of the world's greatest inventions to help you. You use a plow pulled by oxen to make rows in the soil. After that, you have to weed the rows by hand. You use a sickle to cut wheat when it's ready to harvest. But the greatest invention is probably irrigation, which brings water to your crops and helps them thrive. Using clever systems of canals and levees, you control the flow of water from the river to your fields. In the evening, after you've bathed in a big tub in the shade, you eat dinner with your family. Your son asks for a story, so you tell him about the great kings of old and the epic battles they fought. The stories may be old, but they're still relevant today. After all, the kings and heroes of old lived in the same place you did. And though they're gone, their influence still echoes in your life. Tomorrow will be another busy day, so you tuck your son in bed and go outside to gaze at the stars. You look up at the endless darkness above you and think about the mysteries of the universe. What else is out there beyond the stars? What caused them to shine? What happens after you die? You don't have any answers, but you take comfort in the rhythm of the night sounds. The crickets chirping, the owls hooting, the familiar sounds help you feel grounded in your world. You head back into your house, lie on the cool mud brick floor and fall asleep. It's been several months since planting. You're glad to see that the rains came and the crops are growing well, but you also know that this can't last forever. There will be a time when the crops are harvested and it will be harder to find food until the next planting. Fortunately, you have some extra grain stored from last year's harvest. But you owe taxes to the ruler, so you don't have all that much to spare. You better hurry up and finish harvesting. Soon you'll have to take your taxes to the city. The harvest has finally finished, and now you must take your taxes to the city. Taxes are a portion of your harvest that you give to the ruler or to a temple. City officials have arrived at your village to collect the taxes. You greet them warmly and give them some bread and cheese while they wait for everyone else to bring their taxes. Soon the courtyard is filled with farmers from your village. Some are bringing grain, others are bringing tools or metals. You take your grain to a scribe who weighs it on a scale. He records the weight on a clay tablet, breaking the seal and leaving his mark that shows that you paid your taxes. You can't wait to get home. After all that work, you're tired. Life in Mesopotamia is challenging, but you're not alone. You live in a society with thousands of people just like you, each trying to carve out a life in the unforgiving landscape. You share a common language, culture, and religion with those around you. And while the land is unpredictable, it also provides everything you need to survive. As you gaze up at the stars, you wonder if there's anyone out there looking back at you. You know you're part of something bigger than yourself, something that has existed for generations and will continue to exist long after you're gone. In order to survive in Mesopotamia, you must learn to adapt and overcome. The land is unforgiving, but it also provides everything you need to survive. You must learn to read the signs of the land and the weather, to plant and harvest at the right times, and to conserve water during the dry seasons. You must also learn to work together with your neighbors, to build canals and levees, and to protect your fields from floods. Finally, you must learn to worship the gods and goddesses of the land and to pray for their protection from the elements and from your enemies. Thank you for joining me today. To learn more about ancient civilizations, click on the video playlist. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more educational videos. Did you know that on average, we lose 35 pounds of topsoil every year due to soil erosion? That's why we're so excited to partner with. As we leave behind the daily rhythms of farmers and families, let us turn our attention to one figure who towers above Mesopotamian memory. His name has echoed for thousands of years, part king, part myth, part warning, and part inspiration. He is Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk. Imagine the city of Uruk itself, around the year 2700 BCE. High walls rise around it, said to stretch miles in length, enclosing temples, palaces, and homes of common people. The bricks are sun-dried, stacked one upon another, forming a boundary between order inside and uncertainty beyond. Within these walls rules Gilgamesh. Accounts describe him as 2/3 divine and 1/3 human, a curious balance between godlike power and mortal frailty. Whether he was truly a historical king or more a figure of legend, his story is inseparable from the culture of Mesopotamia. He is remembered as both a builder and a tyrant. His strength was said to be unmatched. Imagine him striding through the streets of Uruk, taller than most men, his voice carrying across the crowd. To some he was a protector, the one who ordered great walls to be built. To others he was oppressive, demanding labor, tribute, and obedience. The clay tablets that preserve his story describe his people crying out to the gods for relief from his heavy hand. The gods answered by sending Enkidu, a wild man of the steppe, meant to challenge Gilgamesh's arrogance. Enkidu lived at first among animals, hairy and untamed, until he was drawn into the world of people. When he met Gilgamesh, their contest was fierce. Two powers locked in struggle, yet instead of destroying one another, they became close companions. Together, they undertook adventures. They ventured into forests where towering cedars grew, trees that seemed eternal. There they fought Humbaba, the guardian of the cedarwood, described as monstrous and fearsome. Later, they slew the bull of heaven, sent by the goddess Ishtar in anger at Gilgamesh's rejection. But where there is triumph, there is also consequence. For these deeds, the gods decreed punishment, and it was Enkidu who paid the price. He fell ill, slowly and painfully, and in time he died. Imagine Gilgamesh sitting by his friend's side, powerless, watching the strength fade from the one person who had matched him. It was a moment that shook him to his core. From then on, Gilgamesh was haunted not by enemies, but by the shadow of mortality. He set out on a long and wearying journey, seeking the secret of eternal life. He crossed deserts, sailed over seas, and wandered through distant lands. At last he found Utnapishtim, the survivor of a great flood, who had been granted immortality by the gods. Utnapishtim told him that life without end was not meant for kings or ordinary men. Gilgamesh was given a chance to seize a plant of renewal, a gift of youth. But even that slipped from his grasp, stolen by a serpent before he could use it. In the end, he returned to Uruk, not with immortality, his understanding. He looked again upon the walls of his city, high and enduring, and he saw that though his own life would end, his works, his stories, and his people would carry forward. The story of Gilgamesh is more than just an adventure. It is one of the first written explorations of grief, friendship, and the fear of death. Through him, the Mesopotamians expressed their own anxieties, the burden of rulers, the inevitability of mortality, and the search for meaning. Imagine the people of Uruk gathering at dusk as a scribe recites the tale aloud from clay tablets. The listeners lean against one another, the air cooling around them, the firelight flickering on mud brick walls. They hear of Gilgamesh's strength, his loss, his wandering, and his final acceptance, and in those words they recognize something of themselves. So the king of Uruk, whether real or imagined, endures as a mirror of human longing. His tale, pressed into clay thousands of years ago, still whispers across the ages. Now, if you've been captivated by the ancient tales of Gilgamesh, you're in for a treat. Just imagine stumbling upon an artifact from thousands of years ago, a tangible link to a bygone era. Well, you don't have to imagine it, because history has provided us with something even more remarkable. A hero's journey. The Epic of Gilgamesh is not just a story, it's a reflection of the human experience. Gilgamesh, the mighty king of Uruk, grapples with themes that resonate even today. The pangs of loss, the burden of leadership, and the existential dread of death. Now, if you find yourself drawn to tales of valor and wisdom, let me introduce you to an extraordinary book that's been captivating readers for centuries. It's a timeless epic poem that takes you on a journey alongside Gilgamesh, a legendary Mesopotamian king, as he confronts the harsh realities of mortality. What makes this story so compelling is that it doesn't shy away from the raw emotions that Gilgamesh experiences. In fact, it delves deep into his psyche, exploring his grief, his despair, and ultimately his acceptance of his own mortality. This is a profound meditation on life and death that will stay with you long after you finish reading. Now, here's what sets this edition apart. You'll embark on this epic journey alongside Gilgamesh through the lens of renowned authors like Andrew George and N.K. Siddle, whose masterful translations bring the ancient text to life with modern sensibilities. But that's not all. This isn't just a solitary adventure. The book includes insightful essays from esteemed scholars that provide deeper cultural and historical context, enriching your understanding of this timeless tale. Plus, you'll have access to supplementary materials online that will transport you even deeper into the world of ancient Mesopotamia. The engaging introductions, lucid verse translations, and additional resources in this book make the complexities of the Epic of Gilgamesh accessible and captivating for readers of all backgrounds. Whether you're a student of literature, a history enthusiast, or simply someone seeking profound insights into the human condition, this book is a must-read. Allow yourself to be swept away by the poetic verses and thought-provoking interpretations as you explore the depths of one of the world's oldest and most influential stories. The story of Gilgamesh might have faded into silence. For centuries, perhaps even millennia, his name was little more than a faint echo. The tablets that bore his tale were buried deep, forgotten under layers of rubble and sand. Cities crumbled, empires fell, and new civilizations rose in their place. It was not until the 19th century, in a world utterly different from ancient Mesopotamia, that his voice began to return. Imagine the landscape of northern Iraq in the mid-1800s. Wide plains scattered with broken mounds, ruins rising like silent hills. Local people had long known these mounds were the remains of great cities, but European explorers and archaeologists who came with spades and notebooks, eager to uncover what lay beneath. One of the most important sites was Nineveh, once the proud capital of the Assyrian Empire. Beneath its ruins lay the remnants of a great library, built by King Ashurbanipal in the 7th century BCE. This was no library of paper and ink, but of clay and cuneiform. Thousands upon thousands of tablets stacked and stored, recording myths, laws, prayers, rituals, and the knowledge of a civilization. Imagine the slow, careful work of excavation. Men dig into the mounds, carrying baskets of earth. The air is thick with dust, the sun high overhead. From the soil emerge small rectangular tablets, the writing still sharp despite the centuries. To an untrained eye, the wedge-shaped signs look like nothing more than patterns. But to scholars, they hold entire worlds. Among these fragments were pieces of a long narrative poem, written in Akkadian, a language of Mesopotamia. At first, no one knew the full story, but bit by bit, like assembling pieces of a puzzle, the tablets revealed the adventures of Gilgamesh. The king of Uruk lived again, his friendship with Enkidu, his battles, his grief, his long quest for immortality, all pressed into clay thousands of years earlier, now brought back into the light. One moment of discovery stands out. In the 1870s, a young scholar named George Smith was working at the British Museum, piecing together broken tablets from Nineveh. As he read through one of them, he came upon a passage that made him pause. It was the story of a great flood, of a man who built a boat, saved animals, and survived while the waters consumed the world. The similarity to the biblical tale of Noah was unmistakable. News of this discovery spread quickly, sparking fascination across Europe. For many, it was startling proof that the stories of Mesopotamia had influenced traditions that still lived in the present. But beyond the sensation, there was something quieter, something more profound. A voice had returned from deep time, carrying with it the oldest known epic of humanity. In the grand sweep of history, few tales have resonated as deeply as the story of Gilgamesh. The hero's journey, his friendship, his loss, his quest for immortality, they touch universal chords that transcend time and place. Now, as we delve deeper into the world of ancient Mesopotamia, we find that the story of Gilgamesh is more than just a tale. It is a window into a civilization. Every line of cuneiform script, every fragment of a broken tablet brings us closer to understanding a world that shaped our past and continues to influence our present. Before we dive into the rich tapestry of the Epic of Gilgamesh, let's take a moment to explore the world that cradled its birth. Ancient Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization, was a land where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers watered the soil of what is now Iraq, Kuwait, and Turkey. This region, bathed in the warm glow of the sun, nurtured the seeds of human innovation. It was here that cities like Uruk, the legendary home of Gilgamesh, sprung up and thrived. These cities were centers of trade, culture, and governance, laying the foundation for what would become some of the earliest empires in history. Life in Mesopotamia was not just about building cities, it was about creating systems. The Mesopotamians developed ingenious irrigation networks to harness the river's bounty. They established legal codes to maintain order, and they crafted religious beliefs to explain the mysteries of the universe. Their innovations in mathematics, astronomy, and medicine were surprisingly advanced. In the heart of this dynamic world, the story of Gilgamesh took root. Who was Gilgamesh? Some historians believe he was a real historical figure, a ruler of the city of Uruk, around 2100 BCE. Others see him as a blend of historical inspiration and pure mythology. Regardless, his story captured the human imagination and evolved over centuries, incorporating elements of folklore, religious beliefs, and cultural values. To understand the Epic of Gilgamesh, it helps to know a bit more about the Mesopotamian worldview. The religion of ancient Mesopotamia was polytheistic, meaning that they believed in multiple gods. The pantheon of gods was vast, with each deity having their own domain and personality. Gods like Anu, the sky god, Enki, the god of wisdom, and Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, played significant roles in the lives of the Mesopotamians. These gods were not distant, uncaring beings. They were seen as active participants in human affairs, capable of both great kindness and terrible wrath. The epic poem reflects this belief system, showing Gilgamesh wrestling with divine powers and making deals with otherworldly beings. The epic also gives us a glimpse into the social structure of ancient Mesopotamia. Gilgamesh, as the king of Uruk, held a position of great authority. He was not only a leader, but a symbol of the city's power. The presence of a divine lineage in his ancestry elevates him to a near godlike status. On the other hand, we have Enkidu, a wild man of the desert representing a life untouched by civilization. Their friendship defies social norms, highlighting the epic's exploration of themes like camaraderie and self-discovery. As we continue our journey through the epic, we'll encounter other figures from Mesopotamian lore, each contributing to the rich tapestry of the narrative. Shamsi Adu, the sun god, Utnapishtim, the survivor of the Great Flood, and Siduri, the goddess of the sea. Each of these characters adds a layer to our understanding of Mesopotamian mythology and cosmology. The world of ancient Mesopotamia was not without its challenges. Floods, droughts, and battles with neighboring kingdoms were constant threats. The epic doesn't shy away from depicting these hardships. Gilgamesh's quest for immortality, driven partly by fear of death, reflects the very real dangers of life in this ancient world. In a time before modern medicine and with a constant struggle for survival, mortality loomed large in the minds of the Mesopotamians. The Epic of Gilgamesh is a testament to the human spirit. It's a story of courage, friendship, and the relentless pursuit of understanding life's greatest mysteries. Set against the backdrop of a world that's both familiar and alien, the epic invites us to walk alongside Gilgamesh as he confronts the trials that test not only his strength, but the very essence of his being. As we move forward in this series, we'll continue to uncover the layers of meaning woven into the fabric of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Each episode promises a deeper dive into this timeless tale and the world that gave it birth. Join me as we explore themes of friendship, loss, and the boundaries between humanity and divinity. We'll analyze the epic's literary devices and its lasting impact on world literature. And along the way, we'll discover how the story of Gilgamesh continues to resonate with us today. If you're as captivated by this ancient epic as I am, I encourage you to share your thoughts. What resonates with you the most about Gilgamesh's story? How do you think the Mesopotamian world influenced the tale? Your comments enrich our shared understanding of this timeless narrative. Let's continue this journey together, one that takes us back millennia and yet somehow feels deeply relevant in our own time. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, may the echoes of ancient wisdom guide you and inspire you to seek out stories that connect us across time and space. So far, we have walked alongside farmers in their fields, followed the legendary King Gilgamesh through story, and stood with archaeologists as they uncovered ancient tablets. Now, let us turn our gaze upward toward the elite class of Mesopotamia, and in particular, the priests who held power not only over ritual, but over the rhythms of daily life itself. Imagine a great temple rising above a city like Uruk or Ur, a ziggurat built of countless mud bricks stacked into terraces. Each level ascends steadily upward, as though to bring human beings closer to the gods who watch from above. The air is warm, the steps broad, and from the summit the view stretches far across fields, canals, and clustered houses below. The temple stands not just as a house of worship, but as the center of wealth and authority in the land. Temples controlled land. They collected taxes and oversaw the storage of grain. Imagine a vast courtyard filled with jars and baskets, each carefully sealed, marked, and counted. Within these walls, scribes pressed records into clay, numbers of sheep, measures of barley, debts owed, offerings received. They recorded everything. In this way, the temple became the accounting office, the treasury, the archive, all rolled into one. And so it was that the priests of Mesopotamia, far from being merely spiritual guides, held a central role in the organization of society. Their duties touched every aspect of life, from the most mundane to the most mystical. The priests of Mesopotamia were men of many tasks. Some studied ancient texts, seeking wisdom and prophecies. Others, the care of livestock, ensuring the animals remained healthy and ritually pure. Still others tended to the fields, planting crops and harvesting their fruits. All of this work was vital, for the temple's resources sustained not only its operations, but the lives of many people who lived nearby. When the harvest was good, there was enough grain to store and to share with those facing hunger. In times of plenty, the temples also lavished gifts upon the cities they dominated. Imagine merchants arriving at a city gate bearing gifts for a ruler, carpets woven with intricate patterns, spices that filled the air with exotic scents, and precious metals that glittered in the sun. These tokens of generosity forged bonds between the temple and the populace, reminding the people of the god's bounty. But the relationship between temple and city was not always so harmonious. There were times when priests became too powerful, their influence spilling over into the realm of politics, sometimes even challenging the authority of kings. In such times, the streets would echo with tension as commoners argued with robed priests, and rulers caught in the middle sought to maintain order. It was a delicate balancing act. The temple thrived on the support of the people, yet at times it seemed to forget its roots. The priests, once servants of the community, began to see themselves as superior, their rituals and traditions as more important than the needs of ordinary folk. As the gap between the two widened, the harmony of the city faltered. The people looked to their leaders to restore balance, to remind the priests that their power, like the river's flow, must stay within the banks of tradition. Theirs was a responsibility not to be taken lightly, for without balance, the city could crumble like the mud brick that made its walls. We're building something special here. We are bringing history to life through immersive storytelling. Imagine walking through ancient Mesopotamia, not just seeing it, but feeling the heat of the sun on your shoulders, hearing the murmur of priests in the temple, smelling the spices brought from distant lands. Our stories take you there. We don't just tell you about it. So join us on this journey back in time. Your support helps us create more of these free educational videos. Thanks for being part of our story. Now let us shift our focus, moving away from the bustle of the marketplace to the hushed reverence of the temple, where the priests of Mesopotamia performed their sacred rituals. The flickering light of oil lamps danced in the vast chamber, casting long shadows on the walls, adorned with images of gods and heroes. In this ethereal glow, priests clad in white linen moved with quiet dignity, their gestures precise, their voices low and resonant as they chanted ancient hymns. It was a scene of profound tranquility, broken only by the gentle lapping of water from a nearby fountain and the soft rustle of linen garments. Yet beneath this surface calm, there was a deep intensity, a complete absorption in the rituals that were meant to keep the gods appeased and the world in balance. Every movement, every word was a step toward communion with the divine, an attempt to understand the will of the gods and apply it to the affairs of mortals. One priest raised his hands in supplication, his face turned skyward, his lips moving in silent prayer. Another, with a steady hand, poured a libation of oil onto a blazing altar, the smoke curling upwards like a prayer. Around them, offerings lay in neat array, fruits and flowers, cakes and wine, each carefully selected and prepared to honor the gods. The rituals of the Mesopotamian priests were not solitary acts. They were performed in the presence of the community, reinforcing the bonds between the people and their deities. Ordinary folk, dressed in their finest clothes, stood in the outer courts, their faces a mixture of awe and anticipation. They too were participants, if only in spirit, in these ceremonies that were as much theirs as they were the priests'. The rituals were a source of stability in a world that could be harsh and unpredictable. They provided a framework of order and routine, a rhythm of worship that echoed the cycles of nature and the needs of society. For the people of Mesopotamia, these rituals were more than just ceremonies. They were the mortar that held the walls of their world together. As the evening deepened, the temple courtyard fell quiet. The last prayers were murmured, the final offerings made. Only the faint glow of oil lamps and the soft murmur of the fountain broke the stillness. The priests, their white robes now dusted with the red earth of the desert, gathered near a small fire. Their faces, usually so solemn, were relaxed, their voices low and easy as they shared stories and jokes. They were not just austere figures of worship, but men who found solace in camaraderie after a long day of service. They spoke of myths and legends, of battles between gods and monsters, and of the triumphs of heroes long gone. Their words wove tales that had been passed down through generations, stories that gave meaning to their rituals and a face to their gods. The younger priests listened intently, their eyes shining with wonder and reverence. They saw in these stories not just entertainment, but a glimpse into the very essence of their faith. For the priests of Mesopotamia, storytelling was a sacred act. It was a way to pass on not just information, but values, beliefs, and traditions. Each tale was a thread that wove together the tapestry of their faith, connecting the old with the new, the known with the unknown. As the fire crackled and the stars emerged in the night sky, the priests continued their tales, their voices echoing in the stillness of the temple courtyard. For them, this was more than just storytelling. It was a communion with the past, a celebration of their heritage, and a preparation for the rituals that awaited them in the morning light. In the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, where the Euphrates and Tigris flowed like arteries of life, the priests were not just keepers of rituals, they were chroniclers of the heavens. From the summit of their ziggurats, they watched the stars with an intensity that bordered on obsession. They charted the paths of planets and predicted the tides of human fortune based on the cycles above. For them, the sky was a grand tablet on which the gods inscribed their will. Each sunrise, each lunar phase was a sign, an omen to guide and sometimes to warn. This wasn't just about curiosity or a thirst for knowledge. It was about control in a world that often felt chaotic. By understanding the heavens, the priests believed they could anticipate earthly events. They tracked the seasons, predicting when the Nile would flood, guiding farmers in their planting. They monitored the stars during battles, hoping for divine guidance. They even interpreted omens in the shapes of clouds. Nothing escaped their scrutiny. Even the flight of birds, the flight of a flock, the direction of their journey, all became a message from the gods. The priests, armed with their keen observation and a deep understanding of mathematics, recorded their findings meticulously. Clay tablets became canvases on which they sketched constellations, mapped eclipses, and detailed the paths of comets. Their observations weren't confined to the temple. Priests spread their knowledge across the land, training others in the art of reading the skies. They became advisors to kings, lending their celestial wisdom to matters of war, trade, and succession. Imagine a pharaoh listening intently as a priest explained the significance of a recent eclipse, his face grave, his decisions hanging in the balance. The priest's influence was profound, their voices shaping not just religious practices, but the course of history itself. And yet, for all their power, the priests were not immune to the whims of fate. Natural disasters, political upheaval, and even the shifting of celestial bodies themselves could undermine their predictions. They were revered, yes, but also fallible. In their quest to read the signs of the cosmos, they, like everyone else, were subject to the uncertainties of existence. The priests of Mesopotamia, perched between earth and sky, were figures of immense power and quiet contemplation. They observed, they recorded, and they interpreted, forever seeking to decipher the language of the stars. Their legacy lies not just in their temples, but in the very fabric of human understanding of the universe. And so we reach the end of our journey through Mesopotamia, Throughout this series, we've traveled back in time over 4,000 years to explore what life was like during the height of the Mesopotamian empires. From the banks of the Euphrates River, we visited the ancient city of Babylon and uncovered the secrets of its legendary hanging gardens. We then ventured further north to the Assyrian metropolis of Nineveh, where we explored its vast walls, royal palaces, and even participated in a dig to unearth its hidden artifacts. Our journey took us to Ur, the home of Abraham, where we discovered the intricate ziggurat of Nana and learned about the deep religious beliefs of the Sumerians. In the sacred city of Eridu, we marveled at the ruins of the Temple of Enki and explored the very first written stories of humanity. Along the way, we learned about the inventions of the wheel, the plough, and the sail, as well as the development of early mathematics and astronomy. We witnessed the construction of a boat and joined a funeral procession to understand the rituals surrounding death and the afterlife. We also experienced the joys and challenges of daily life in ancient Mesopotamia, from harvesting crops and trading goods to entertaining royalty and appeasing the gods. And now, as we stand here at the edge of this extraordinary land, it's time to reflect on all that we've seen and experienced together. So let's take a moment to appreciate the incredible journey we've been on. As you look back on all that you've seen and heard, think about the people of Mesopotamia and their way of life. They were ordinary people just like us, living their everyday lives, raising families, and trying to make the world a better place. Despite the challenges they faced, such as floods, droughts, and attacks from neighboring empires, they found ways to innovate and adapt. They developed advanced technologies for their time, such as the plough and the sail, which helped them to farm the land and trade with other cultures. They also made significant contributions to mathematics and astronomy, which helped them to understand the world around them. The people of Mesopotamia were also deeply religious. They believed that the gods were all-powerful and that they needed to be appeased in order to live a good life. They built temples and ziggurats as places to worship, and they held festivals and rituals to honor their gods and goddesses. The religion of Mesopotamia was not just a matter of faith, but a way of life. It shaped the way people saw the world and their place in it. But perhaps most importantly, the people of Mesopotamia were storytellers. They had a rich oral tradition, and they loved to share stories about their gods, their heroes, and their everyday lives. These stories were often passed down through generations, and they helped to preserve the culture and history of Mesopotamia. Some of the earliest known stories ever written come from Mesopotamia, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, which tells the tale of a great king's journey for immortality. As you think about the people of Mesopotamia, consider the ways in which they were both similar to and different from us. How were they like us? How were they different? What can we learn from their way of life? By thinking about these questions, you can gain a deeper understanding of the people who lived in Mesopotamia and the world they created. We're now standing here at the edge of the great floodplain, looking out over the fertile land that sustained the ancient Mesopotamian empires. Behind us lie the ruins of great cities like Babylon, Nineveh, and Ur. And before us stretches the vastness of the rivers and the land they watered. As we stand here, it's important to remember that this land was once alive with the sounds of human activity. Here, thousands of years ago, the people of Mesopotamia farmed the soil, raised their animals, and built their homes. They built great cities and temples and developed new ways of thinking about the world around them. They invented the plough and the sail, which helped them to farm the land and trade with other cultures. They also made significant contributions to mathematics and astronomy, which helped them to understand the world around them. But it wasn't always easy to live in Mesopotamia. The rivers that made the land so fertile also caused massive floods that could destroy everything in their path. And the people of Mesopotamia had to work constantly to keep the floods under control. They also had to defend their land from invaders and constantly worry about the next drought or famine. Despite these challenges, the people of Mesopotamia thrived. They created a rich culture that lasted for thousands of years, and their innovations spread to other parts of the world. They were storytellers who loved to share tales of their gods, heroes, and everyday lives. And their stories helped to preserve their culture and history for future generations. As we continue our journey through Mesopotamia, let's take a moment to appreciate the resilience and ingenuity of the people who lived here. They were able to create a thriving civilization in a land that was both beautiful and dangerous. They developed new ways of thinking and new technologies that helped them to understand the world around them and to improve their lives. They were also storytellers who shared their culture and history through the power of stories. As we move on to our next stop, let's carry the legacy of Mesopotamia with us and remember the people who made it such a special place. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Mesopotamia. We hope you've enjoyed learning about this fascinating ancient civilization and the people who lived there. If you'd like to learn more about ancient civilizations, be sure to subscribe to our channel. We have videos on many other ancient cultures, including ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome. As we say goodbye to Mesopotamia, let's take a moment to reflect on all that we've learned. We've discovered the secrets of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, explored the royal palaces and libraries of Nineveh, and traced the roots of civilization in the sacred city of Ur. We've witnessed the construction of a boat and joined a funeral procession, gaining insight into the daily life and customs of the Mesopotamians. We've learned about their inventions, their religious beliefs, and their contributions to mathematics and astronomy. But perhaps most importantly, we've walked in the footsteps of the people who lived in Mesopotamia and tried to see the world through their eyes. We've experienced the challenges they faced, such as floods and droughts, and the joys of their way of life, such as the beauty of the land and the richness of their culture. Now it's time for you to use what you've learned and share your own stories about Mesopotamia. Tell your friends and family about the amazing things you've seen and experienced. Write stories or draw pictures about the people and places you've encountered. And most importantly, keep the legacy of Mesopotamia alive by continuing to learn about ancient civilizations and their contributions to our world. So go forth, young explorers, and share the wonders of Mesopotamia with the world. The ancient Mesopotamians were masters of storytelling, and they would have loved for you to become the next generation of storytellers. Use your imagination and creativity to bring the past to life for others. Who knows, you might even inspire the next generation of explorers to follow in your footsteps. As you continue your journey through the world, remember the lessons you've learned in Mesopotamia. Be resilient in the face of challenges. Be curious about the world around you and never stop asking questions. And when you look up at the stars at night, remember that the ancient Mesopotamians looked to the heavens for guidance and inspiration, just as you do today. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Mesopotamia. We hope you've enjoyed learning about this fascinating ancient civilization and the people who lived there.